There is a row of beehives sitting at the edge of an Australian shipping port. Nobody harvests them. Nobody sells the honey. They are not there to make anything. They are there as bait. Last time, the question was what happens the day something finally gets through. This is that day, and the thing that caught it wasn't a dog. It was a beehive. Australia's border isn't one nose, it's a system with a lot of different ways of noticing, and one of them is alive. Here's how the country lost a fight it had been preparing for. To understand the hives, you have to understand what everyone was watching for. Varroa destructor is a parasite, a mite, about the size of a pinhead that lives on honeybees, feeding on them, and carrying viruses from one bee to the next until a colony collapses. The Australian government calls it one of the greatest threats to the country's honeybee population and to every plant industry that depends on bees for pollination. And that second part is the part people miss. This is not a story about honey. Bees pollinate crops, almonds, apples, cherries, canola, blueberries. When you threaten the bees, you are threatening the fruit aisle. For decades, Australia stayed clear of it, not through luck, through watching. The department that guards Australia's plant health says bee mites are most likely to arrive on infested bees that have stowed away on ships and boats. So that's where the country put its eyes. The National Bee Pest Surveillance Program is an early warning system run at the places considered most likely to be the point of entry. Ports. And one of the things it uses is a sentinel hive, a colony of bees kept deliberately at the wharf, doing nothing but existing and waiting to be found by something. Think about how strange that is for a moment. Most detection is a machine, or a nose, or an inspector opening a box. This is a living thing put in harm's way on purpose, so that if something arrives, it lands on the hive the country is already watching, instead of the 10,000 hives it isn't. The program has a stated reason for existing. In its own words, an early warning system greatly increases the possibility of eradicating an incursion and limits the scale and cost of an eradication program. Remember that sentence. It comes back. In June of 2022, at the Port of Newcastle in New South Wales, they looked inside the sentinel hives. And Varroa was there. Oh, what happened next was not a quiet inspection. Within days it became a national emergency response, funded by the Commonwealth, by every state and territory government, and by the industries with everything to lose. The New South Wales Department describes what it turned into. The largest multi-agency plant biosecurity response in Australia's history. Not the largest that year. In the country's history. The map around Newcastle was drawn into zones. A red zone where eradication happened, a purple zone around it under surveillance. Movement of hives was locked down because a beehive is a thing that travels, trucked around the country to pollinate whatever is flowering that month. The one thing that makes bees economically useful is the same thing that would spread a mite from one end of the continent to the other. So the truck stopped. And inside the red zone, hives were destroyed. Not damaged hives, not sick hives. Every hive in the zone, whether it had a single mite in it or not, because that is what eradication means, and eradication was still at that point believed to be possible. Which is the part of this story that doesn't get told. Someone owned those hives. The New South Wales and Australian governments announced an $18 million package to support beekeepers caught inside the response, and when you read how that money was broken up, the scale of it stops being abstract. A registered recreational beekeeper, someone with a few hives in the back paddock, was reimbursed $550 for each hive destroyed to control the outbreak. $200 more if they wanted to keep the woodenware, which covered the cost of the bees inside it. Commercial beekeepers in the surveillance zone were given a choice. $290 for a 5-frame nucleus colony euthanized, plus $7.85 for each additional frame. Or, if they chose not to euthanize, $117 for the honey they would never get to sell. That's what it costs to put a price on a beehive. $550 and a form to fill in. The department's own page carries a line that is easy to skim past. We value the sacrifice of every beekeeper, it says, and thank everyone for their cooperation. Sacrifice is an unusual word for a government website. It's the right one. For 14 months, the response held the line. Zones, inspections, destroyed hives, locked down trucks, an entire industry putting its own livelihood into the fire on the theory that a short catastrophe beats a permanent one. And in September of 2023, it was determined that eradication of Varroa Mite in Australia was no longer achievable. Read that again because of what it doesn't say. It doesn't say anyone failed. It doesn't say the response was too slow, or too small, or too late. It says the thing they were trying to do had stopped being possible. The largest plant biosecurity response in the country's history. 14 months. And the answer was no. Now go back to that sentence from the surveillance program, the one about an early warning system greatly increasing the possibility of eradicating an incursion. The system worked. The hives were where they were supposed to be. The mite was found in them, exactly as designed, at a port, in a colony put there on purpose. And it still wasn't enough. That is a genuinely uncomfortable thing to sit with, and it's the honest lesson of this episode. Detection is not the same as control. You can see the thing coming and still not be able to stop it. So, the country changed the question. In February of 2024, a national plan was approved that stopped trying to remove Varroa and started trying to live with it, slowing the spread and teaching beekeepers and growers to find and manage the mite themselves. That program ran for 2 years and finished in February of this year. It has since been detected in South Australia, in Victoria, in the Australian Capital Territory, and in Queensland. The same map this channel used to watch detector dogs spread across one airport at a time now shows something else spreading across it, one state at a time. And then it got worse, in a way almost nobody has reported. In January of this year, testing on apiaries in northern New South Wales confirmed that Varroa there had developed resistance to the chemical treatment beekeepers rely on. In February, a second resistant version turned up in the same apiaries. By April, those same hives were resisting a completely different miticide as well. Then the Elizabeth MacArthur Agricultural Institute confirmed what that actually meant. Those resistant mites are associated with a more recent incursion, separate from the ones found in 2022. It got through again. A second arrival, at some point nobody has publicly pinned down, carrying resistance to the treatments that were the whole basis of the plan to live with it. And it's moving, through the trade in bees and through hives that simply sit near each other. So here is where this leaves the country. Australia built an early warning system, and it worked. It mounted the largest response in its history, and it lost. It wrote a plan to coexist, and something arrived that the plan's main tool doesn't kill. The border was never a wall. Episode 1 called it a filter, and this is what a filter looks like when something makes it through. Not the end of anything, but a country changing what it is trying to do twice in 4 years. Which raises the question this whole series has been circling. If a dog didn't find this one, and a hive of bees did, what else is out there watching? What are the other layers, and how would you even know if one of them stopped working? That's next time. The next time you drive past a row of white boxes in a paddock, you'll know something you didn't before. Some of them aren't there for the honey. Some of them are just there to be found first.